All right, Dr. Matt Eschler here, looking to be your relationship fitness coach. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for hitting subscribe and for sharing this all over the place. This video among all of the other ones that you've got on a couple of different YouTube sites. And I do appreciate the time. I appreciate the messages that you send. There's a couple of messages that I don't quite understand around voodoo and magic, but besides that, you all are just incredibly good to me and incredibly nice to make these kind comments and to encourage me to make these training videos and to make these videos that'll help relationships all over the place. So thank you so much. Hit subscribe if you haven't. We want at least 1 million subscribers. We want 1 million subscribers sometime. We're at 300 and something, up from 4. So, we've made a lot of progress towards that, and it's all because of you. So I do appreciate you. Please share it with your friends and family and encourage them to hit subscribe as they like or as they enjoy some of the videos. So today we are going to have a conversation where I want you to get a notebook out. And if you're here with your lover, your spouse, if you're here with maybe someone that you're going to be married to and some premarital work that you are just trying to get ahead of the game and learn some stuff, grab a notebook. And there's going to be a number of assignments that you can either do by hitting pause on the video, or you can just listen to it all the way through, then go back and do the assignments. And we're going to work on putting a link to a homework page or a little workbook for this. In the meantime, scrolling across the screen, when I say I'd like you to pause and do this assignment, the assignment title will be, and a little bit of instruction will be scrolling across so that you can read that and just know exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about physical intimacy. It has a lot of different names. We call it sex, we call it intercourse, we call it the erotic. There's tantric sex. There's all types of labels and all types of ways of going about describing it. There's some pretty graphic and maybe even ugly ways, all the way through to a little bit humorous ways. But I would like to treat this with a certain amount of respect and call it sacred intimacy. This sacred intimacy, I believe, was given to us to benefit our relationships, to benefit us through the means of creating life, the means of creating connection, creating joy, peace. And there's some things that mess with it that people do inside of their relationships that can create problems around intimacy and sex. And so I'd like to help clear those things up. And there's a certain amount of incorrect goal setting when it comes to intimacy and sacred intimacy. There's a little bit of a misnomer in how we want to look at intimacy as a couple, and different ways that men and women view intimacy, physical and non-sexual intimacy. And so we want to clear all that up and hopefully in the process bring you closer together, have you turn towards each other as a couple and strengthen, deepen, and juice up your sex life so that it can be phenomenal, not just mediocre, bad, or even just kind of good. We want to make it phenomenal, juicy, healthy, fun sexual intimacy. Okay? So the first assignment, the first thing I would like you to do, and this again will be scrolling across the top, I'd like you to do some thinking and put down a sentence or two of what is physical intimacy to you. What is it? What does it mean to be physically intimate? And if both you and your spouse, or you and your fiance, or you and the person that you're doing these assignments with could just take a moment, you can hit pause, or again, listen to this all the way through and then go back and hit the homework after. But if you could just take some time and just a couple of sentences, it doesn't have to be in depth, but you can do as much as you want. But what does it mean? What is sex? What is sacred intimacy, physical intimacy? What does it mean? What is it? What is it to you? Okay? Part of what bring people into my office a ton is they're having things, we call it mixed sex drive, where one person has this need for intimacy and the other person has a lower threshold for need and maybe doesn't want intimacy as often. And so there becomes some bickering back and forth. And then along with the bickering is this definite like moving away from feeling sexual towards each other. And so they start to war. They start to get into arguments, into feelings are getting hurt. There's also erectile dysfunction. There's things that go on with men and women around the ability to physiologically work correctly all the time when it comes to physical intimacy. There is different compulsions like pornography, a compulsion to view pornography that causes people that view pornography to turn away from their partner and turn towards a screen to get their intimate need or their sexual needs met, which is not very sexual. It's not very wonderful, but by the time a person is compulsively viewing porn, they're likely engaging in masturbation. They're likely engaging in unhealthy practices that take them away from that really healthy, deep connection with their spouse. Now, there's nothing shameful, wicked, or terrible about masturbation, but when it's connected to a compulsive viewing of pornography, then the sexual arousal, the drive for that person becomes connected to a screen and an image that is, or a strip club and someone that's really not available, but very accepting and very willing to let you look at them. And so the person that becomes aroused by that has a very difficult time long-term staying aroused to their spouse that they're growing and aging with. And so there's a certain amount of dilemma set up by the compulsive viewing of porn that objectifies persons makes them a body part, not a whole human. And like the first and second thought around sex has to do with the airbrushed perfectionist stuff that is very acrobatic on a screen versus the very real deep connection with a live person that might be not airbrushed and not honed to perfection based upon a camera and an angle. And so you can see the dilemmas there. So couples get themselves into trouble. What I want to do is create some synergy that you can use by doing some very specific assignments with your spouse, with your lover, that will deepen your erotic drive, deepen your sacred, intimate drive for each other, deepen your desire for each other while losing the compulsive side of it or the usury side of physical intimacy. And so the first step of getting out of some of those ruts that people fall into, whether it be mixed sex drive, compulsive viewing of materials that cause a turning away or objectification, or just plain old physiologically maybe not working so well, is to give yourself permission to explore intimacy with your spouse. Now, there's both physical and emotional intimacy that need to be explored. And so many couples come into my office having never had an eyes open, lights on conversation while being naked together about physical intimacy. And it's baffling because men and women's bodies work so different, and every human's body has different responses to touch. And so you want to be able to guide each other through that, but there's so much insecurity about the body, so much insecurity that people hold that couples stop exploring together. The second thing is a little bit like that, but it's giving up the notion that healthy sexual participation in a marriage has to do with numbers, like a number. How many times are we engaging in physical intimacy a week? It becomes a question that people ask is how often should we be having sex, or how often should we be physically intimate? And I'm thinking if we could get rid of the numbers game and really get rid of the inability to talk. Literally, no one has had more sex by talking about how little sex they're having. So I want you to think about that. There's no couple that's actually increased their intimate time by talking about how little intimacy they share. And so exploring intimacy, exploring your bodies, exploring the emotional sides of sex, both the sexual and the non-sexual, and letting go of that there's a certain amount of times that's expected, which just creates this huge expectation around sex, which generally messes with people um, and messes with them by having this expectation, having this almost fear that they're not going to participate or perform well enough or often enough, and so they get nervous. And so men with ED sometimes can't perform because they're so nervous about being able to perform. And women have this idea that they're being used for a release of tension rather than an intimate partner, which is not very sexy or not very endearing. And so I'd like to challenge you to create a new vibe in your marriage, a new vibe in your relationship. Move away from talking about increasing frequency or not increasing frequency, or the argument about frequency. Let go of the notion that there is this super proper way that we all know with our eyes closed, and start exploring and creating a new vibe. I want to share with you this vibe really has to do with everything that happens in between two sexual experiences, two physically intimate times. All the stuff that goes on in between that is non-sexual or sexual intimate talk and behavior. So literally foreplay, if you will, can be doing dishes together, cooking together, vacuuming, taking care of your kids, getting to know your teenagers. All of that stuff is endearing and has couples turning toward each other, which is very intimate. Now, I want you to think through physical intimacy does not begin in the bedroom. It begins when you have this idea that everything you do does matter. I remember talking to a couple, and they talked about different ways that they felt intimate. That was one of the assignments we gave, is that, what is intimate? And intimacy literally can come from this really welcome, relaxed, no rush touch from your lover. Like when I'm walking into a store, say with my wife, and she grabs just gently around my bicep and just holds her hand there while we walk, and I crook my arm like this, and that touch lets me know that she's glad she's with me walking into the store, whatever store we're going to. And that is intimate. That's an intimate connection. That's a moment that we share together. This is another assignment I'd like you to do in this little notebook, and you can, again, either hit pause or it'll be scrolling across. I want you to think of things that are non-sexual that feel connecting, feel endearing, and just jot down 5 of them. Each of you jot down 5 and then share them with each other. Share what you found to be, like in the last week or two, connecting, intimate, endearing to each other, okay? I want you to just think through that lens that intimacy can come from a lot of different areas. I really feel like a lot of couples have lost the urge to share things with each other. Here in southern Utah, and you guys might be living in the mountains in Massachusetts, or all the way over into the state of Washington in the snow country. You might not be living in a place where this works, but here, after a rainstorm, it's like the desert rain hits hard and fast, and then it leaves, and then the sun pokes out, and there's rain on the cacti and on the different flora and fauna that's around the desert, and you can smell the sage just potent in the air. And one time, my wife's out there smelling that, and she came running in. She was actually taking the garbage out, and she had this garbage can she's wheeling out, and I don't know what I was doing. And she came in, hey, come out. And so I ran out with her thinking there's some emergency. And it turns out what there was is the smell of sage, and she just pulled me into a hug, and we talked about how the smell of sage was just potent and beautiful in the air. And we shared that experience together. Now, she could have easily smelled that, finished her task of taking a little garbage can out, came back in and said, boy, that smells like sage out there. And then I might have walked out by myself and smelled the sage and kind of had a moment by myself. But she wanted to share that with me. I want you to think in the last month, 1 or 2, let's do 2, experiences that you would have loved to share with your spouse. 2 experiences over the last month that you just had a moment, you had something that you noticed, something that was interesting to you that could have been connecting to just experience with your lover. There, welcome back. So we've got some ideas now around how to deepen the intimate connection. And so far, we're talking about deepening the turning towards. We're talking about non-sexual intimacy. We're talking about the idea that in between physical intimate experiences outside of the bedroom, there is these things that we can do to turn toward each other that really increases desire, increases intimate connection, and increases the ability for a couple to really lean into the relationship, let their guard down, and feel loved. Does that make sense? And so intimacy is about trying new things together. It's about going to new places together. It's about meeting new friends together. So how many of you got married and you each had your friends, and your friends came and hung out with you and your spouse, and hopefully your spouse liked your friend's spouse and vice versa? How many times have the two of you went out and found friends together, just made some new friends? How often have you found a couple in your midst that you, in maybe neighborhood or maybe one of your groups that you go to, or maybe a church group, and invited a new couple that you both felt like you had maybe a potential connection with and did something fun with them? See, that's the energy that creates a new vibe in your relationship. You're meeting friends together. You're experiencing places together. You're experiencing new things together. You're sharing little experiences, little moments that were important to you with your lover. All of that is deepening the relationship, okay? So I'd like you to take a minute and just ponder these things that we've talked about so far. I want you to think about over the time you've known each other, okay? Now, my wife and I have been together married for 34 years, and we've known each other probably for 45 years, okay? So over 45 years, there's a lot. That's 4.5 decades. If I was to do this assignment, I would try to remember over the last 4.5 decades some really big deal experiences that were peak moments. So we have these peak imprinting moments, like your first kiss. Still remember my first kiss with Chris. Still remember what that felt like. Remember the first time she let me hold her hand. I remember the first time we made out in the back seat of a car. It's actually a big dual-tired truck, huge truck, and it had a king cab with a back seat, uncomfy. But we made out there for a couple of hours, and so there's things that imprint on us. Do you remember the very first child you two were bringing into the world? Some of you that have had children, what was it like finding out you're pregnant for the first time? What was that moment like? I can still remember that moment. What are some of the moments that you can remember, whether you've known each other for an hour or for 50 or 60 years or anything in between? You've probably had some peak experiences. So I'd like you to jot down 3 or 4 peak experiences and then share them with each other. 3 or 4 peak experiences that you've had together that imprinted on your soul, that was good, filled with joy. And I want you to remember those long enough to share them with each other, okay? I wonder if you've got certain rituals. I wonder if you've ever thought about how rituals become a deepening moment, so that when you struggle, when there's chaos, when there's argument in the relationship, you've got these rituals that can pull you back together. Like, how many of you have a couples council once a week where you just sit with each other and literally give each other a report card of what's going well and what needs to change up just a little bit? And I wonder how often you really do sit down and go through that inventory together. I wonder if you remember your very first relationship song, the song that you two chose to be a representation of your marriage. I'd like you to take a minute and together decide, what is your song? What is your song as a couple? Now, if you each have one, share it with each other. Listen to it together. Choose one out of the two, maybe for now to be your song. And so you can say, we have a song. If you already have one, jot it down. If you don't, maybe each of you go listen to some music and come back with an idea. And then together, choose a song to represent your relationship. So I want you to think about all of those things and realize that so far what we're talking about with deep, passionate, sacred intimacy, that erotic love that every couple wants involved inside of their relationship, most of that making love happens between your ears and how you're looking at each other. The other batch of it can happen down below, between those legs of yours in your physical area where you use to make love. But a lot of it can happen up here between your ears. And the thought about that is how you look at your relationship, how you turn towards each other. The rituals that you hold can either deepen or weaken your erotic bond, your sacred, intimate bond that you have with each other. And so making love is literally both an emotional, cognitive, and physical process. And so often we forget that. So often we forget about how to make love all the time with each other. So often we forget that it's important to be making love all the time. How many times do we send grab something on the way home from work texts, but we don't send I can't wait to show you what I'm going to wear to bed tonight texts? How many times have you sent just a slight, naughty, little kind of funny text? Now, we don't have to be not safe for work. We don't have to be crude or even if you want to, that's fine with me, by the way. But really, the idea is get each other's attention. Help each other feel a little bit desired throughout the day. That's symbolic of a couple that's really always thinking about and turning towards each other. Now, I get we all have stuff to do. We're all busy. We've got another agenda. We've got the operational part of our relationship going all the time. We're raising kids. Sometimes we don't want our kids to read risque texts that we send our spouse, and so you'll have to figure that out. But the idea is treat each other different than you treat everyone else. Have these boundaries set that we treat each other this way because we're the team. We're the most important team in the world at this time. We have a Heavenly Father that's very interested in our success, that's very interested in our family's success. We've got kids that become a priority for the operational side. But as lovers, it's just us. We're a team of one. We're a team of the two of us against the world. And it's important to remember that and to turn towards each other for advice, connection, direction. And if there's people trying to infiltrate that are like tempting us with betrayal, tempting us with a question of fidelity or a question of how important the relationship is, have a hard no boundary there to not let any of that in, because it will not work. It never follows through in a healthy way, and it always ends up causing someone pain. So I'd like you to really consider conversations as a couple about strengthening your ties and bonds, constant turning towards each other by having more fun and creating that new vibe inside of the relationship. Now, we've asked some questions about the meaning of sex, about the stuff that you enjoy, about what is your song and what are some of the experiences that you can share with each other. Now we're going to talk very specifically about some conversation starters that you can have. So each of these questions, each of these conversation starter questions is super powerful in opening up a dialogue, okay? So with your notebook, I'd like you to jot these questions down and then answer them with maybe a paragraph or a couple of sentences so that you can then talk with your lover about it. So I'd like you to write down what you enjoy doing together. What are some of the things you enjoy doing together? Now, I've met with couples that have been so disconnected that they literally have no hobbies together. They have no physical touch that they seem to enjoy together. They've kind of polarized to where he does his thing and she does hers. They've divided up the chores, divided up the stewardships and tasks, and they basically run parallel like roommates that are not even as connected as real roommates. They more just exist together. So I'd like you to think all the way back to when you did enjoy doing something together, if you don't any longer, or if you do, put it down, write it down. You do not have to have the same list. Like, she can really enjoy hot summer drives around looking at houses in neighborhoods, and you might enjoy rappelling over a big ravine. And then you can mix and blend these lists together. And so what do you enjoy doing together? Where do you ask your lover sometime? And I'd like you to just have your answer ready and then talk with each other, ask this question of each other. Where do you find energy and juice? Where do you find that excitement, energetic juice that keeps the marriage kind of like light and moving forward? Where do you get that from? Do you get it because you love to be with that other person? Do you get it because you've been disconnected and you want to find that connection again, so you're anxious and involved with each other? So where do you find the energy and the juice to create excitement inside of your marriage? Okay, I want you to think about that. Where would you find that in your soul? It might be through physical stuff. It might be through sharing emotionally. It might be through stimulating cognitive conversations. It might be from exploring erotic sex and intimacy with each other. It might be a spiritual thing where you study and deepen your spiritual connection. But where is it that you get that energy for excitement? I want you to think about, this is another a topic that I want you to talk about. What is something beautiful, outstanding that you noticed today about your lover? I want you to write it down, and then when the two of you are back together, I want you to tell them. And then I want you to do that every day for a month. And then after that, begin doing it just weekly. Find something every week, and you can do as many as you want, but at least one a week. Something beautiful that you caught your partner doing, that you noticed, something that made them really just kind of like look good to you, like whether it be an act of service, or maybe it was something kind they did for you, or some self-care they did for themselves, or something for the neighbor, whatever it is. They might have given a talk in your local church. They might have done something wonderful at work that you heard about. But whatever this beautiful thing is that you noticed, or that you made a note of, just write it down, and then get in that habit by doing it every day for a month, and then at least weekly come up with some things that you notice. See, this positive sentiment override is so important. How many times do you think about your intimate relationship and all these negatives, like it's not very often, it's infrequent, and not happy with this, and I wish they would do that, and I wish they would be different here? How often do we filter everything through, I already know what they're going to say, and it's negative, it's rude, or it's mean, and so I don't even need to talk with them anymore? We hear that all the time. We hear couples that are so wrong about the intention of the other, and they think they're so right because they might have said something mean in this context, and now this partner's applying it to every other context. And we do this, and then we refuse to check in to see if we're right. Had one person in my office, and she said, he does not love me as much as I love him. And he'll admit it, and he doesn't even want to spend time alone with me. He always wants a whole bunch of friends, or the kids, or some distraction. And I go, are you sure that that's true for him? And she goes, yep, I don't even need to ask, and don't you dare ask me to ask, because you always want me to, and I'm always right. I'm not going to ask. I don't want to hear the answer, because he'll just lie. So basically, in this case, she determined that she was going to work both sides of the relationship, and he wasn't allowed to participate. And if he did participate, she would just call him a liar. Can you see how hopeless that is? So my challenge is, like, in the world of intimacy, we have to talk. Turns out this particular husband, one time when they were fighting, both flooded, he said, I am so much more comfortable around you when there's friends or kids, because you're way nicer to me then. And of course, that was rude. And of course, he should not have said that. He said it in frustration. He said it in context of that fight when she was being mean. And he was just thinking, if our friends were here, you would not be this rude to me. And then she applied that to every part of their life and judged him as if that was true. And I know it hurt her feelings, and she's doing that just because she's defending herself from future pain. But what if they both took a deep breath, forgave each other, and then really had an in-depth conversation about how it is to be alone, what it would be like to be kind? What if they were willing to be that kind of intimate? So I want you to do that. I want you to practice communication, clear up all of your negative beliefs and create this positive sentiment override. So if you think through this lens of what is intimacy, what is sacred intimacy, what is erotic sex in your relationship, what is the pathway to that? It's changing the vibe in your relationship. It's deepening the rituals and the connection outside of the bedroom. And then it's a practice of exploring, being curious, and staying connected. So I want you to think about the different ways that we can be connected. There's the physical connection. This is about technique. This is about eyes open, lights on exploration of sexual technique that's physical. There's also a lot of touch involved with physical intimacy. There's both non-sexual touch that needs to be explored and sexual touch that needs to be explored. Part of the erotic sex that a couple really wants to deepen and strengthen, that sacred, intimate time together, is knowing what is physically sexy, knowing what is accepted as lowering the guard and making it desirable to be together. So I slap my wife's butt because that feels non-sexually intimate to me. She thinks it's lewd and kind of crude of me. So I didn't get the desired outcome, but once I understand she really likes me to like rub her back and massage her shoulders, so I can touch her that way and she accepts it as really kind of that warm melt her heart and leans into me. So if I'm a smart guy, I might tease her now and again and smack her butt, but most often I'm going to do the massage her shoulders because I know that melts her heart. So what are some things that you do? What are some things? This is an assignment. What are some things that you have explored both physically and both non-sexual and sexual as around physical touch? What kind of non-sexual physical touch do you like? Do you like to hold hands? Do you like to cuddle and sit close? What kinds of sexual touch have you explored with the lights on to really teach each other, eyes open, about what your body responds to? So many couples have never done that. Couples that do find a wealth of data that they can use when they're having intimate time together that is just incredible. How are you energetically? Have you ever done this assignment? I'm going to give you this assignment. Have you ever tried this? It's a tantric assignment that's usually used with couples early on. It's super interesting, super healthy. Sit knee to knee, like cross-legged or however you're comfy, and face each other. Get as close as you can and be comfortable, and look into each other's eyes, and without saying any words, speak with your eyes to each other. Just make contact with your eyes and hold that stare and breathe. Go in, out. Just good deep breaths in and release while making eye contact. Do that for 2 minutes. And then the next night, increase it to 4. Maybe over a couple of times, increase it to 5 minutes. And really just speak to each other by only making eye contact. Accept each other's gift. Notice the different intensity of the stare. Notice any insecure feelings that you might feel. Make every attempt to not break eye contact during those minutes. Set a little timer so that you can like start and stop, and really use that time to lose all of the bashfulness around eye contact with each other. Your heart rate will go down, your intimate desire will come up, and it's super connecting, okay? So I'd like you to think through that lens of this eye contact assignment is about energy. It's about expressing energetically your romantic feelings, your romantic love, and maybe, like in the case of betrayal, sometimes as you reconnect and find that new love, that new relationship, sometimes making that eye contact comes with the rage of betrayal, the forgiveness of the betrayal, and the deepening of the love that you can feel for each other by forgiving and maybe even verbally stating, for what you've done, I forgive you. And then the partner that was the betrayer responds with a, thank you, I needed forgiveness, I love you. If you can make that eye contact and then energetically speak, there's so many applications for that we can get into in other sessions, okay? Emotionally connect. Emotionally is when you feel the newness of the connection each time you turn towards each other. So you get home from work and you do that 8-second hug and the 6-second kiss, and it's a reconnection emotionally. It's a rebirth of that moment, and it's a moment that you'll have that you can log as a high point of your day. Share the high and low points of your day and emotionally feel that new connection that begins. So literally, you can be married for 50 years and have a deepening connection multiple times a day, 350 some odd days a year. And for the rest of your eternity together, you can like constantly do things to deepen the connection, to deepen the stuff that you have that keeps the relationship energetic, exciting, erotic, passionate, sacred, and all of that. So emotionally, feel the newness of each connection each time you turn towards rather than turn away from each other. Psychologically, this one's one that these days has really taken a nosedive. I want you to think about the psychological connection when you lose that FOMO, that fear of missing out. Put your phones away, put all the screens away. Do not have anyone interrupt you. Put your kids somewhere in front of a TV or whatever you need to do with them, and really be psychologically present. Be 100% focused and really listen to understand each other through some conversations. Psychologically connected couples are couples that listen to understand, and then they're able to mirror back what they learned about you before they are seeking to be understood. Now, in order to be psychologically present, you can do all kinds of stuff, but I want you to never try to persuade your lover to believe or to take your side or to adopt your way of seeing the world. Just describe it. Just openly, without expectation, describe your world to them. And to be psychologically present, they'll take it all in. They'll mirror back what they heard until they say, do I understand you? And you confirm that you're understood. And then you switch roles, where the idea is it's not to be right about something. It's not to persuade your lover about something. It's to be understood by your lover about all things. And then you have two ideas on a topic on the table, like you both have an opportunity to describe a scene or to describe an instance. And then after you've both having a turn to be completely understood, you may find some common ground and then negotiate agreement on how to share the vision of the rest. And it can create synergy towards solutions. It can create synergy towards deepening the love, deepening the erotic, intimate time, deepening the sacred time that you have together. So that psychologically being present, I'd like you to figure out a topic, and I'd like you to take turns talking about the topic, sharing your view of it, sharing your opinion about it. Don't try to convince the other person that you're right. Just share where you're coming from. It can be any topic. It can be something that you're managing that's a problem in the marriage. It can be something that you haven't made an agreement on. It can be the next vacation you want to take and where it is and what you'd like to do. It can be about your romantic connection. But I'd like you to have your partner be the speaker first and describe it. You mirror back what you heard until it's confirmed that you understand, and then you take a turn. And then together, look at where you stand in solidarity and you agree with each other. And then together negotiate the parts that you don't quite see eye to eye until you have shared vision on the entire topic. And that's romantic, okay? So I'd like you to do that assignment and see how it goes together. So the more you engage in these activities outside of the bedroom, the more your bedroom simply becomes just one of the many locations for intimacy. It's not like everything intimate, romantic, and sexy happens just behind closed doors. It's happening, it's the new vibe in the relationship. It's the new vibe in your covenant relationship together that's going to last for all eternity. And so this idea of intimacy tells you that it isn't something that you do, like sexual intimacy, sacred sexual intimacy, erotic sex, is not something that you do, it's a place you go. It's a place you go with your significant other, with your spouse. It's a place that you are swept off your feet and taken to. It's not just simply an act. So can you see how this new way of looking at intimacy is not about making orgasm the goal? In fact, orgasm hasn't even been spoken of yet, and we've spoken of nothing but sacred, intimate, physical, and non-sexual time. If we make orgasm the goal, then really it's just about getting a need met or release and then done. If we're making love, it's about getting connected, getting deeper, getting to know each other, learning about each other, learning our hopes and dreams, and sharing our lives together, and really creating that sexual vibe that permeates certain relationships, and it could be yours. I want you to ask these questions about this idea of making love. So we've got all of the background set up. We've got all of the turning towards. We've deepened our rituals, deepened our conversations. We've talked about the emotional, the sacred, the physiological, the emotional. We've talked about some of the technique around human sexuality. Now we want to talk about what is lovemaking. So I'd like you to take your notebook out and answer the question, what is lovemaking to me? Number 2, what is an intimate experience that you have had that is not physically sexual? So what is an intimate experience that you've had that deepened your intimate connection that had nothing to do at that point with physical sex? I want you to ask yourself, when do you feel the most free? What is it about your relationship? See, I have so many people that say they get married and they lose their freedom, and have people say that they literally don't want to lose freedom by getting married. I suggest that marriage frees you up. You now have a partner that is completely, has your back and is deeply in love with you. Having someone constantly have your back is wonderful. It's safe. And I want you to really explain what it takes for you to feel free, okay? I know this is an odd question, but I just want you to have some fun with it. Jot down in your notebook and then share this with your lover. Do you prefer hot or cold water? And where on your body do you like to feel it? If it's going to be kind of dripped or splashed on you, do you like hot or cold water? And what refreshes you? And what part of your body would you like it splashed on? Just see where that question goes. Another question that has a lot of different ways of looking at it, and I'm just curious what you two do with it. Do you prefer, during lovemaking, do you prefer giving or receiving, and why? Just think about that. Are you a person that really enjoys the giving part of it? Or do you really enjoy the receiving part of it? And in every relationship, there's probably a little bit of bouncing back and forth. Of course there is. But there might be a favorite part for you. Which of your senses really guides your intimate lovemaking experience? I want you to think about, is it your visual? Is it a visual thing you like to see? You like to look, open your eyes and see what's going on? Is it auditory? Do you like to hear things? Do you like to hear the little noises that are made? Do you like to have things whispered in your ear? Is it tactile? Do you like touch? Do you like to be touched or to touch? Is it taste, smell, spiritual? Is there a deepening of the spiritual connection during an intimate encounter? When you make love, what is your hierarchy of maybe your visual first, auditory second, spiritual third? What is it for you? Do you have one that kind of takes over, or do you like multiple, and is there a hierarchy there? What parts of yourself do you connect with? Now, we all have these different kind of parts inside of us, the rebel, the caregiver, the person in you that's more dominant and feels like in control. There's the other part of you that's a little more submissive. So think about, what part of yourself do you connect with first during intimacy? Are you the rebel? Do you get a little bit mischievous, a little bit wanting to try out new things and wanting to maybe be a little bit rebellious and a little bit daring? Are you a caregiver? During your lovemaking, are you the dominant or the submissive one? There's so many different avenues, and it's curious to just decide what shows up in you first and what is maybe a part two to that. And then share that with your spouse and have a laugh over it. Really kind of get to know each other a little bit. Like, what if you find out your spouse is a little bit rebellious and likes to be daring, but is also submissive and just wants to be swept off his or her feet? I want you to think about the last time or a future time that you're going to make love with your spouse. Can it be a place of letting go? Really a place of transcending argument, transcending some of the disagreements, and really be riding that wave of connection? Can it be a place that you can feel completely taken care of, completely safe, loved? See, healthy, sacred intimacy, healthy erotic sex, healthy physical sexual behavior inside of a couple should be associated with safety, love, connection. It's a place where you rise above it all and have no worries. You just kind of leave your worries behind. You're not checking your phone. If you wear an iPhone or an Apple Watch on your wrist, take all that off too, so you're not tempted to check during an intimate encounter. I can't believe there's people that do. They're looking at their phone because there's this fear of missing out runs so deep. We get this notion that we're going to offend people if we don't respond in 4 or 5 minutes. And if our intimate encounter is going for 2 or 3 hours, then we're going to miss a lot of phone calls. And people have to get used to you come first. You and your lover come way before even your kids, way before your friends, way before your spiritual leaders. Heavenly Father might be up there watching over you, but even Heavenly Father is super concerned about the health of your romantic relationship. How do you physically communicate the love connection? I want you to think about how you communicate making love and connect physically. Where is a place in your mind that you dare let go and be a little bit mischievous? When do you just let your guard down and step out of that comfort zone and explore? Be a little bit risky, a little bit daring. Now, you don't have to do anything painful or anything that is a hard no, a boundary. And you get to have those, but really focus on the hard yeses and the things that you want to explore, not the few hard no's that people just really are turned off by. That's really erotic love, sacred intimacy. That's really a deepening of the vibe of intimacy inside of your relationship. There's a bunch of assignments there. I'm curious how they're going to work for you. I'd like you to give them a try. I'd like you to just step out of that comfort zone. If you've been married for 50 years and you've turned into roommates or just maybe just live-in partners that just bump into each other now and again, or if you're brand new newlyweds or doing premarital counseling, I'd like you to really take a look at all of these rituals, questions, and connections and start the process right now. Deepen the relationship today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't start on Monday. So often we say, I'm going to start working out Monday, and it's Wednesday, so you wait 5 days and then you try to. It just never works well that way. So start today. Do some of these assignments right now and go share them with your spouse. Hit subscribe. Hit a note to me. Let me know how this goes. Love you all. Can't wait to hear from you again. Dr. Matt, your relationship fitness coach. We will come back with another episode of this tomorrow. Can't wait to hear from you. That's me. I'm signing out. See ya.